unrest, the unrest, the unrest. Podcast, 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 podcast.
Welcome to the Unrest Podcast. I'm Madeline Green.
And I'm Caitlin Stansel. If you have not done so yet, go ahead and hit subscribe so you can catch all of our real life haunts as soon as we post them.
This is our second episode of 2023, so a brand new year. Last time we shared our mascot ghost named Boozy that was named by an OG listener of the Unrest Podcast. So we're also going to be selling those stickers. We're going to do packs of the stickers for $10. So if you're interested in buying some Unrest Podcast stickers, check out our Instagram and Facebook to see kind of what they look like and send us a message and we will get you some of the Unrest Podcast stickers with our number one star, Boozy.
Boo. And as we said last time we were talking about Boozy, you know, they prefer to use the they, them pronouns.
Yes. Or it.
Or it. We have an awesome real life haunt this episode. I'm so excited about this one. Alex, who is a journalist and writer and has written some stories for publications like the Huffington Post, was willing to be interviewed this week. And he has an awesome story, a little background on it. On the side, he has done some acting. And his story starts off with an acting job that he got chosen to do and maybe didn't expect to sort of have an experience that gave him some chills still to this day. Take a listen.
So my name is Alex Aronson. I'm a journalist, and I've always had an interest in the paranormal ever since I was a kid. My grandma raised me on a healthy dose of unsolved mysteries and midnight radio. Like, we would be going to sleep at night at her house and she would turn on the radio in the middle of the night and just, it'd be like a trucker calling in, just being like, I just saw a truck at lights in the sky and I-90 and just like all of this crazy weird stuff. So that definitely planted the seed. And ever since then, I've just always had an interest in all things supernatural and spooky. I definitely am a skeptical believer. So I'm open to the possibility that there are other things out there that we might not understand, but I'm not going to automatically just, if I hear a noise upstairs, just go straight to ghost. You know, I'm going to try and cross off some of the logical explanations. Is the piping up there? Is there a window open? Is there? So that's kind of how I approach the paranormal. I'm very open to it and the fact that there are things we just aren't able to explain, but I like to kind of go down my checklist first, logically. I, on the side, like to do a lot in film and media and television. And so an opportunity came about where a show for the Travel Channel was coming to film kind of locally where I am in upstate New York. And it was going to be a paranormal show, one of the many paranormal shows that they do. And they were looking for people to be reenactment actors. So it was going to be a show where they had the real person as telling their story with the paranormal. And then over their story, there was just going to be actors reenacting the scenes they were talking about. And so when I found out this was happening near me, I was like, oh, I got to jump in this somehow. I have to get involved. I love watching these types of shows and, I definitely wanted to jump on the opportunity. And so I submitted and went through, all of the process, and I found out that I was accepted onto the show. And they sent me the location, and I knew nothing about the show, what we would be doing. All I knew is I would be the actor playing one of the characters that they talk about in the story, in the reenactment. portions of the show. And I didn't have any lines I needed to memorize. It was just going to be very simple, just action shots that they needed to get. And so I drove to the location, and when I got to this location, and again, this is upstate New York, but when I got to the location, I felt like I was transported into a different place. Like I genuinely felt like I was in Louisiana or something. I pulled down this long gravel driveway, and it was surrounded by swamp, which just isn't the type of geography that you have in upstate New York. But it was surrounded by swamp. And then finally, as I make my way down the long bending driveway, the house came into view. And I remember thinking to myself, as soon as I saw the house, I was like, wow, the producers of this show did a great job at finding the perfect haunted house for this shot, because it just looked totally creepy. It looked like it was straight out of like a Conjuring movie or something. It was a 2-story house, but it had like gray siding on it that was kind of chipping off, and it was very weathered, and it was a very old house, and it had kind of parts that you could tell were added on at later dates, but even those were kind of decrepit. So it was a very eerie looking house. And I pulled up, got in and introduced myself and got all set up and everything. And it was, I want to say, not too long after I arrived that there was another group of people that I noticed weren't like part of the shoot going on that day, but they were kind of sitting around in the tent. We had kind of a base camp tent set out in the front lawn. And I kind of gathered through hearing them and hearing other members of the production that this was the family who owned the house. And so I assumed they were just kind of sitting on the side watching the TV people do their thing at their house. And it was, I don't remember explicitly what they said that cued me in, but eventually I realized, oh no, this isn't a TV house. This isn't just a location that the production found. We are going to be filming this TV show and the reenactments at the actual house. This is the actual location where the supposed hauntings took place. And that family that was sitting right there, they weren't just the owners, they were the people telling this story. And so that's when the moment hit me that, oh, I'm going to be playing a ghost in front of potentially the ghost that's in this house somewhere. Yes, I genuinely thought I was just going to be showing up to, like a set, but I had no idea I was going to be showing up to the actual house itself. Immediately, my nerves hit the wall because I was a little anxious to begin with to do the job and everything, but to then find out I'm going to be shooting it in a haunted house and be playing a character that actually lives in that house was very troubling. And I didn't know ahead of time who I was going to be playing, but the producers gave me my costume and everything. I went and changed into it, and I remember there were probably 2 other actors that were doing the reenactments as well that day. And I remember the 3 of us were kind of standing around, and the other 2 kind of knew who they were playing, and I still didn't know. And one of the family members comes up and is asking, oh, I think you're going to be this person, but who are you going to be? And they point at me, and they're like, what about you? Who are you going to be? And that's when I told them the costume I had been given, and I had been given a kind of an all-black wardrobe with an old school top hat. And immediately the woman, the owner of the house, she knew exactly who I was going to be playing. And she's like, oh, you're going to be playing him. in like a very ominous way. And I'm like, oh, like, tell me more. That didn't sound too good. And so she let on that the spirit that I was going to be playing was actually one of the more malevolent ones in the house, and one of the more, he had allegedly scratched a priest on the stairs. He would show up late at night. The upstairs was definitely his place of dominance. And, nothing nice. This guy, she didn't really have anything nice to say about this guy. And so immediately once I found out I was playing that person, my heart kind of dropped. I'm like, so not only am I playing a ghost, but I'm going to be playing like an evil ghost in front of, in his own house. And so the dominoes just kept falling. It just kept getting more and more and more and more. I knew nothing going into this. And I really thought it was just going to be more of a staged television show. But as we were waiting around at the base camp that was outside on the front lawn, I did get to talking with the homeowners, and they did let into some of their experiences in the house. And this house had a very dark past. They believe that there have been dozens of bodies that have been found buried on the land, and human bones and remains. And they believed that a serial killer once lived on the property years and years ago that killed a few children in that area. So really dark things. There was somebody that also allegedly hung themselves in the front property. And so a lot of dark things that, I believe in a lot of energies. And so when there's so many terrible things that happen at a place, I don't think that energy just disappears and dissipates. I think that it kind of, can attach itself to a spot. So it was definitely unsettling hearing all of the dark things that happened in her home. And she had lived there all her life. She was raised in that house. And at one point they left the property, and it just kind of stayed abandoned for a couple of years while she went and lived with her mother in another location. And then shortly before filming, they kind of moved back to the house, but it had been abandoned for quite a few years. So you can imagine how kind of out of repair the house was. And it also garnered a reputation locally as being kind of the haunted place. There were two things that I recall happening. The first was on location, the priest who had gotten attacked in the staircase in the house and was a friend of the family that lived there. He was also there. I believe he was getting interviewed on camera for his story. And he was someone that I also spoke with a bit. And he had actually had a friend that came with him that brought a spirit box. And this is the first time that I ever encountered a spirit box. And basically, the best way that I can describe it is it's something that uses different various airwaves and frequencies to be able to, it essentially like shoots out a full sentence. So you could say, is there anybody here with us? And the spirit box, like a radio, would be able to reply yes or no. So they brought this out, and we were just kind of playing with it, and we were waiting for the crew to set up the shot. And when someone asked, is there any spirit with us right now? And immediately the box kind of replied, yes. And then we were all just kind of sitting around, like I was watching it everybody else's reaction, and inside I'm like freaking out, but everybody else seemed cool as a cucumber. And I'm like, what? So right beside this house was an old barn where they believe a couple bodies were buried. And so as they're asking questions, the spirit let on that it was in the barn right next to us. And that was pretty chilling. But the next thing that happened is even more hard to wrap my head around still. We were all outside for lunch, and I had yet to go inside the house at this point. I had still just been outside on the front lawn, prepping for the shoot, getting my costume, signing papers, all of that kind of stuff. But the whole crew and the cast, the family, everybody that was there that day was out on the front lawn at the base camp tent eating lunch. And I'm just kind of sitting at one of the tables on the edge of the tent, just looking up at the house. I was just kind of enamored with how, now that I knew that it was legitimately haunted and that this was a real location and not just one for TV, I was drawn to it and kind of observing the house. And it was the middle of the summer, a hot day in August. There was no wind at all. It was very still. But there was this one window upstairs where the homeowner said this evil entity lived, like to be and hang around. There was this one window up there that looked like the curtain was moving, but it wasn't in like a way that maybe there was a fan or maybe it was the wind, because like I said, I like to try and find the logic in it. So I'm watching this curtain in this window kind of move, and I'm like, okay, what could this be? Can't be the fan or the air conditioning, because those had to be off completely for the sound for the shoot. There's certainly no wind because it's a hot, still day in August. So what is this that I'm seeing move the curtain upstairs in the window? And slowly a couple more people caught on and were kind of looking up at the window at the same time. And the curtain was moving in a way that it was almost as if like somebody was pulling the curtain back and peeking out of it and then letting it drop, and pulling it back and then letting it drop. But there was nobody there and everybody else was outside. And then on one pullback, all of a sudden, this face appeared in the window. And it was like, the best way that I can describe it is it was like a ghoulish, pale, gaunt face. And it was just staring directly out the window. And as quickly as it appeared when the curtain pulled back, the curtain dropped again and it went away. And I was just kind of sitting there just in complete awe, and chills ran through my body. Like, what was that just appeared? And the homeowner, who was sitting not too far from me, very nonchalantly was like, oh, there he is. He was checking us out. Just like it was a normal Tuesday for her. Just a normal any day for her. But I'm sitting there wondering, like, did I just really see a ghost? Did this really just happen? And I was in shock. A couple of the crew, I don't think noticed it, but I certainly did. And all of the family it was almost like they were entertained by it. Like, you know, oh, there he is. He's checking out what we're doing. They're just curious. But I had never in my life seen anything like that. So when I did, it really took me back. It did look like a human face, but it looked really sunken in, like the cheekbones were really sunken in, and those were there was more of a contrast, so those were darker than the rest of the face that just seemed really pale. But it did look human. Then we finished up lunch, and the director comes up to me and is like, okay, your scene's going to be next. We're going to film it upstairs, and we're just going to grab a couple of shots of you doing this and that. And immediately in my head, I'm like, oh shit. So I have to go upstairs in the room where I just saw this thing look out the window at me, and I have to be this thing. Like, I have to pretend I'm this thing in front of him. Like, he's going to be watching. And I was very nervous on the inside, but I was trying to play it cool because I was still there to do a job. But, like, I was like, this is the most surreal. Like, I did not expect this when I woke up this morning. Yeah. I did not think this was where this day was going to go. So I walk in the house, and this was my first time actually going in the house because I had yet to be in the house. And the inside of the house was very dark, and it just was very kind of cold in there, and even though it was so hot outside, and there wasn't any fans or air conditioning inside because of the noise that it would make for the cameras and stuff. So I go inside and I go upstairs, and the upstairs was kind of just an open one room. It was a tiny upstairs. But I remember just like walking up there and looking around and immediately locking my eyes dead on that window that I had seen him staring out of. And I'm just entranced on that window. And again, I was scanning the room also for other logical. I'm like, okay, where's the fan? Where's like is there like a cutout somewhere that I could have seen that was like, I was trying to like logically place, okay, what did I really see? But I was up there and I couldn't put any logic behind it still. And luckily we just got right to work. As soon as I got up there, they started placing me on my cue and cameras were rolling and we were doing our thing. So I didn't have a lot of time to be able to linger on the thought of all of this, but I definitely did feel very creeped out when I was up there. And I certainly didn't want to be alone up there. I mean, we had probably like 3 other people up there with us. But I remember as soon as they called cut and that I was done with my scenes up there, I was like, all right, thanks. And I went straight downstairs. Like, I didn't want to have to wait up there a second longer than I had to. And as soon as we wrapped, I remembered something the priest had said when he first got there. Someone had asked him, you know, if you go to all of these haunted locations, how have you ever had anything follow you home? And that really stuck with me as a very creepy concept that I hadn't really thought about before. But it made a lot of sense because the priest was like, well, you know, naturally, if you go to their house, they want to come see yours. And he was very nonchalant. I was like, how are all of you people being so nonchalant about this? And he says, I have had a couple things follow me home, but it's only when I didn't do this thing. And he said, what I usually do is when I'm about to leave a place that I believe there are spirits at, I say out loud, you are not welcome to follow me home. Please stay here. I came to your house, but you are not welcome to come to mine. I meant you no harm. You are not welcome. And I remember that sticking in my mind because as soon as I got wrapped up for the day, got my costume all off and signed my papers, I hopped right in my car, and before I left that driveway, I said out loud in my car, If there is anything with me, you are not welcome to follow me home. And that's how I knew I believed enough that something happened there to make me in that moment say out loud that sentence. And so that was really a significant moment for me. It shocks me still that so many people can be so nonchalant about it. Like, I think I didn't grow up in a haunted house or a house that I believe to be haunted. So it's interesting to think that there are people out there who possibly have, and it's more of just a everyday average occurrence to them. Mm-hmm. Whereas to me, this was truly chilling and really creeped me out and made me feel very uneasy. And I can't imagine having gone through this every single day. And so at the same time, though, it's also comforting in a way because, you know, you always think, and especially the way Hollywood portrays the paranormal, that all ghosts are bad and that they're all going to, you know, come possess you. And yes, some ghosts do some very terrible things, according to some people, but not every single one is terrible. And some of them, you know, you just kind of have to remember these were just normal people, some of them who were once normal people, and not every single person in the world is a bad person. But I definitely, as intrigued as I am in the paranormal, I'm equally terrified. So I want to know everything about it, and I want to go to spooky places and investigate them. But at the same time, I'm scared shitless of it. I'm terrified. But it really it was a very unexpected moment. I can talk a big game and say, oh, I love all the things paranormal and I'm so intrigued about it and interested and want to know more about it. But then when you plot me in a pitch black, you know, house in the middle of the night that's supposedly very haunted, I run a very different game. I'm not so confident.
You know, I feel like we would be good friends with Alex if he knew us well enough, because he really shares this same sort of like cautious curiosity for the paranormal, and just like a real interest in it. And I love that this all started with him, you know, being an actor for one of those sort of like haunted places shows.
Right? Like, how do I get that gig to be, you know, one of those actors? Like, who gets to do that? Only the coolest people get to do that kind of stuff. And why haven't we figured it out? You know, I used to watch, you know, the ID channel and Lifetime, like those so dramatic and they
like
always
the
have
reenactments. Yeah.
Yeah. And they always have like people doing it. There's a girl that I know that has been in one of those on the ID channel. And I'm like, all right, how do you get this job? Because I want to be one of those people.
Or like, I always remember Taylor Swift, like she wanted to be like one of the dead people on like CSI or one of those shows, or Law and Order. And she was like, but how do you find that job listing, you know?
Right. Terrible acting background person on the ID channel. That's me.
Well, and like Alex, you know, you would kind of assume, you know, they're just using like a generic room, like on a set, or, you know, they're in like the director's house or something, just using a random bedroom. But then to find out you're actually in the haunted house that the whole episode is about, and you're playing the ghost that is sort of the most malevolent out of all the ones that haunt this space.
That's a whole different thing in itself. Most of those people don't actually act in the house that they're talking about that's haunted. So that's a whole nother level. So of course something's going to happen, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, what a cool experience though. And, you know, I think it sounds like he got great advice from the priest as he was leaving that sort of gave him a little more peace of mind after this sort of bizarre and like jolting experience that he had. But that's definitely one, that would stick in your memory pretty well.
If you follow us on TikTok, I put up a little video of, you just never know when weird stuff like that is going to happen. And I was editing one of our episodes and was reading like the story about a Native American. I'm sitting in my room watching TV. So I'm going back and editing that story. And the whole thing is perfectly fine until this one little excerpt when I'm talking about the Native American himself. And it gets all jumbled and messed up. And I'm like, what the hell is going on?
And it's always when you're like by yourself or like in a headspace where you're like really focused on something like not related to anything spooky at all that something like that happens.
Yeah. And there was just like no reason for it. It's not like I'm not using an internet. I'm not doing anything like that. It was me and my microphone. Everything was perfectly fine. And then, especially when I'm talking about this Native American, it's just this little jumbled mess of weirdness. And I'm like, what is going on? And then, of course, you're like, is that weird? Or am I just looking into it because it happens to be a ghost story?
Yeah. Well, and it also like wasn't a normal sort of audio glitch sound. Like usually if there's one, it's like a really quick little like blip. This was like sort of a sustained sound. And yeah, those are one of those situations where you're like, is this just a weird coincidence or is something trying to talk to me?
100%. So fun. Well, that was a really good story. Probably one of my favorites that we've done. Just something really different, something we haven't heard.
And apparently he has a couple of other stories that he might share with us in the future. So,
Ooh.
Alex, if you're listening, come back on the show soon.
Yeah. And if you have a story, we would love to hear from you as well. You can send us an email at theunrestpodcast@gmail.com.
Or you can catch us on Facebook. We have a Facebook page and a group. In the group, we like to post some sort of, unique interactive content. And also, like we said at the beginning, keep an eye out for our sticker collection of our cute little ghost Boozy. We'll be sharing that soon.
And then definitely check us out on TikTok and Instagram, Facebook.
We already said
U.S.
Facebook.
Postal Service. But until next time,
unrest in peace.